Okay, actually you can go back here to this PC curve. That's why they call it Phillip curve, right? Phillip's curve. Essentially what it says is that if the inflation goes up, it is going up here, right, in the y-axis, according to the PC, output will go up also, right? But if output goes up, inflation will continue to go up. Remember this story that I showed you earlier? Here. Here. So, first, the equilibrium is moving from A to A prime. But then, in the second round, price will continue to go up. And that's why the equilibrium will move from A prime to A double prime. Okay? So that is the story about the relation between output level and the inflation rate. But now, we are not talking about the output level. Instead, we are talking about the unemployment. But we know between unemployment and output is negative relation. If the output level is high, the unemployment rate is low. And vice versa, if the output level is low, the unemployment rate is high. So what you need to do is just reverse this positive relation. And that's why you have a negative relation. And that relation, it's called the Phillip's curve. Okay? So this PC is essentially a curve which replaces the aggregate supply. But I have to put the quotation mark replace, because actually it does not erase the importance of aggregate supply. Everything that you learn about how to derive the aggregate supply is still okay, still correct. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that to inject the element of reality, most policymakers and most public more concerned with the change in the inflation rate. Either inflation increase or inflation decrease. Less concerned with the level of the price. Maybe the analogy is that, you remember when we discussed about LM curve. You know, traditionally, LM curve is positive slope, right? But then I said, in practical terms, LM curve is more horizontal, straight line. Why is that? I hope you still remember. Why is it? Why the LM curve instead of positive slope we use the horizontal line?
Because now the government sets the interest rate, then let the money supply follow.
Correct. So that is the reason. So for similar reason, because in practical terms, so if you want to inject a practical element of reality, then you use horizontal LM rather than positive LM. Does it mean that positive LM is wrong? No, it's not wrong. The analysis of the positive LM continue to be correct. But in practical terms, it's more relevant to talk about horizontal LM. So that's the analogy. So similar thing with here. Is the AS curve, positive slope AS curve, wrong? No, it's correct. Everything is correct. But again, if you want to inject the element of reality, people do not talk about price. Instead, people talk about inflation. So the question is, what is then the relation between inflation and output? Well, if it is inflation and output, there is a theory which is called the Phillip's curve, in which the output is proxied by unemployment, which is the opposite basically. So the proxy of the output is the opposite of the output, which is the unemployment rate. And that theory is called the Phillip's curve. And the relation between inflation and the unemployment rate is negative. Okay. And if the relation between inflation and unemployment is negative, and yet we know the relation between unemployment and output is positive, then the relation between inflation and output has to be positive, and that's where we got this easy curve. Okay, so don't be surprised if in some textbook they no longer draw aggregate supply curve. Actually, in our textbook, if you look at the Oliver Blanchard, which is textbook that we use in this class, compare the textbook of Oliver Blanchard, this edition, which is the 7th edition, with the 5th edition, even with the 6th edition. Okay? In the 5th and the 6th edition, he still used aggregate supply. By the way, in the case of LM, he also still used the positive slope LM. But he realized that recently many policymakers are no longer using money supply, instead they use interest rate. And also he realized that most people are not talking about the price level, but talking about the change in inflation rate. And that's why now in the new edition that there is no aggregate supply. You can check in our edition, there's no aggregate supply. Now they changed with the PC. Okay. All right. Any question on that?
Sir,
Yeah.
may I ask you?
Why may I ask you?
So I read as in the internet some article about Phillip's curve. It's not really, not really accurate because of the time lag, and maybe
Yeah.
we don't need to really consider about the Phillip's curve anymore because it's already been dead, as what they say in the article. So what do you think about
Yeah.
that argument?
That is a very good point. Okay, let me tell you the story behind that. The original Phillip's curve, by the way, Phillip is the name of person. So Mr. Phillip, when originally he developed the theory, he he used in the y-axis as the price level, and then the x-axis is the unemployment. And guess what? He plotted the data in the 1960s and the 70s. Fits very nicely. There is a negative relation. Okay. I tell you what. Next week, I hope the TA remind me. I can show you. When they plot the data of the 1970s, it shows nicely the negative relation between price level and unemployment. So the main purpose of Phillip's theory, the Phillip's curve theory, is to show the relation between unemployment and price. Okay? That's the main purpose. The original purpose is that. But then when the US economy entered the 1980s, that relation breaks down. So what Mr. Phillips argued, or not just Mr. Phillips, but also his followers or the subsequent economists argued, it's not the price level that you need to put in your y-axis. Instead, you need to put inflation rate. Okay, so now they change, rather than the price level is the inflation rate in the y-axis, and the x-axis continue to be unemployment. Okay, and in the 80s it fits nicely. There is a negative relation between inflation rate and unemployment. But then they entered the 1990s, and then 2000 breaks down. It's no longer fit. And guess what? Many of the other economists change again the y-axis. Rather than talking about inflation, they are now talking about the change in the inflation, exactly like here. So it's not the pie, which is inflation, but the change in the inflation. Just because when we enter 1990s and 2000, it breaks down the inflation rate. So until now, they use the change in the inflation rate. So to respond to what you're reading about the death of the Phillip's curve, yes, it's true. The original Phillip's curve is dead. Okay, in fact, it was dead many years ago. In late 80s, it's already dead. But then they changed into inflation rate, so it came alive again. But now in 1990s, 2000, it's dead again. Jadi mati dua kali. Phillip's curve. Is that clear now? Explanation?
Okay, it's clear, sir.
Okay. Any other question before we proceed?
No, sir.
Yes, but you have a picture now, right, about this new market that we introduced today, which is labor market. So, you know the dynamics, what happened in the labor market, and how is it related to the macroeconomics, okay? Now, for maybe one way to test this, or before let's play around with some policy shocks, okay?